So this video is all about putting a nice big fat rover onto the surface of Mars, or Duna. I meant Duna. So as you can see, I have a big old fat rocket to lift my big old fat rover. That's double stacks of orange tanks, all set up asparagus style, and nearly uncontrollable, which is why I have so many frickin' control surfaces on it. And even then, it still shook all over the place while I was launching the thing. But still, I got to space. Setting myself up so I can make a circular orbit before I decide how I want to launch myself into interplanetary space. And I actually took all of my fuel in order to just get into orbit, so almost I have a little bit left in the final stage of the asparagus rocket, but really not much. And just flipping around, getting myself to get out into interplanetary space. And there we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get a gravity assist from the moon. And this rocket was probably overkill, but it was a good thing because I took the most inefficient path I could possibly take when I was designing this thing. I wasted fuel everywhere. Nice fancy shot of the Kerbin and the moon flying away as I got my gravity assist. Alright, enough of that. So, I'm in interplanetary space. I mess around here for a couple of minutes trying to figure out how exactly I want to intersect Duna. And ultimately the problem comes down to, I think, my orbital angle inclination compared to Duna was like way off. So there was only one tiny little sliver of space where I could actually intersect the planet. So about halfway there, I decided to do another correction in order to actually make contact. And as you can see, I go way outside of the orbit. Completely inefficient. Completely useless. But it still works, so I don't care. As I'm getting closer here, there's only a tiny little sliver, as you can see, that orange piece right there, where I'm in Duna's sphere of influence according to the game. So within that amount of time, I have to bring my speed down so that I actually start orbiting the thing, and it's, way above me. I ditched the final the final orange tank that I had on, and now I'm using the nuclear engines. Just getting myself to slow down so I can actually get close to the planet. Right now I'm several 100,000 kilometers away. There we go. About halfway in, I decide to change my angle a little bit so it's not so bad and I don't crash into the planet. And then once I hit my apoapsis, or apogee, I start slowing down. My 4 nuclear engines, which provide almost no thrust whatsoever, but they don't burn much fuel, so that's good. And get into a circular orbit. Decide where I want to land. I want to land at the base of that huge mountain there. I don't know what it's actually called in this game. The Mons Olympus type thing. Do my burn to get slowed down and slowly adjust myself closer and closer to the actual base of the mountain. Now, once I am about to land there, my trajectory is set, I decouple my rover and my the rover, the chutes, and the landing rockets, and take my final stage here, my slowing down stage, I don't know what you want to call it, and just deorbit this thing. Because space junk is bad, debris is bad. Actually, it doesn't even matter. Game cap's out at 250 anyway, so I could have space junk flying all over the place and I'll never actually see any of it. Not likely anyway. But deorbit that thing. I switch back to my rover and just wait for myself to go into the atmosphere. Get myself facing towards the direction of travel. Now, My rover was actually put upside down onto the top of the rocket. So that's why it looks like I'm actually facing my prograde vector, but it's wheels first anyway. There's a tiny bit of atmosphere on this planet, but not nearly enough to slow down, which is why I have 4 chutes on this thing, and even with 4 chutes, it still wouldn't be enough to slow down. Somehow, if you look over on the left, my rockets and my chutes ended up being on the same stage, so I don't want to like, I'm afraid that if I press the spacebar again, I'll just detach rover up here. So I decided to go through with it and click one by one and detach all of the parachutes as I'm falling. I use a little bit of RCS in order to stabilize myself, and I'm using a little bit of thrust on the engines in order to stabilize myself. Parachute's finally open. As you can see, I'm still staying like around 30 to 50 meters per second. Lower on my landing gear, and there's a decoupler that right there that's I've highlighted. I'm going to be using that in order to land. So I'm going to turn on the engines. Just before I hit the ground, I'm going to hit that button, and then hopefully the engines and the parachutes will fly off and not crash back into me. Just slowing myself down to something pretty low. I think I ended up at about 2 meters per second when I hit the button. I'm right above the ground, hit the button, and rover drops. Rocket goes flying off into space. Activate all the little devices on my rover. You can see my you can see my final stage, my space crane flying around out in the distance. Blew up in true Kerbal fashion. Anyway, so finally made it to Duna. Everything's all set. All my panels are extended, my rover's extended, and I flipped it. But I landed, so still counts.